Alrighty, welcome back to the weight room. Thanks for tuning in again today. We're going to have another great discussion on nutrition and a person coming on with a lot of experience working with people, a lot of knowledge in this, in this field. So stay tuned for, really a good conversation. And before we get started, just want to remind you to subscribe wherever you're listening. Remember to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast as well. Now on Spotify, you can do that too. But with that being said, that is it. Let's dive right on into this convo. Here we go.
So my name is Katie Carlson. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I own a company called Nutrition Next. You can look at it at nutritionnext.net. And I got into nutrition somewhat through karma, fate, however you want to call it, because I loved what I did before. I was a headhunter for about 17 years in finance and technology. And my dad, who was lieutenant colonel in the military, passed away out of the blue. And my grief process, because we knew pretty much my father basically ate his way into an early grave. And I now know my father had a eating disorder called binge eating disorder, which in the last 7 years has become a recognized eating disorder. But at the time when he was struggling with his own issues, we had no idea where to even take him to get any help. And Weight Watchers was not going to work for Lieutenant Colonel. He wasn't going to go and do that. A lot of the weight loss clinics wanted to either staple his stomach or hand him a speed pill. And I was actively looking about the last 2 years of his life for somebody who could counsel him like a personal trainer, like understand that it's more than just a chop shop sort of situation with his particular case. And when he passed away, I didn't know how to handle the grief. They would, in the South, they'd bring you casseroles, they'd bring you food. And they would bring it into the house. My mother lived on this hill in Birmingham, and every time they would, I would run the hill. And I'd never had any of those instincts before. And for my own grief process, I went and tried to find somewhere to get some education, just so I could understand better, so we don't repeat the patterns, that live systemically through our genetics. And I found a school out of Manhattan called Integrative Nutrition, and I went back to school just for me. I was still working. I had a really big job, a super fun job with First Horizon Bank. And as I went through that process, my eyes were just completely opened to how little the average fit or in the know American, which is also a very small group. I considered myself pretty much in the know before I went into school, how little we really know about this, how quickly nutrition and the science of nutrition is evolving. Integrated Nutrition is the oldest nutrition coaching school in the country. They've been around for 27 years now, I believe. I'll have to do my math on that. And they teach a program where they expose their students to over 97 theories of nutrition. And we get to listen to pinnacles in each of those different categories. So we have somebody who would come in from, whether it was somebody who's really proponent the idea of vegetarianism, somebody who's really into keto and low sugar, Mediterranean, people are very into mushrooms. And we got to listen to all of the different theories and learn in order to therefore come and interact with our clients and diagnose what nutritional theory is right for them. So as I was going through that whole process, I was just like, wait a minute. I always just assumed we were all people. Put us all on some category of healthy food, and we're all, it's what the Mayo Clinic says, right? There's a pyramid and we're supposed to follow it, and there's a plate, and the whole thing. But the truth is I know these people. There are millions of people around you that can do all the same things, and maybe they don't lose a pound. My own experience, I come from a heavy family, and I've probably gained and lost 20 to 25 pounds 3 or 4 times in my life. One of those times I actually went and did Weight Watchers. Sounds great. Everybody loves Weight Watchers. They make a lot of money. They're amazing. Great for you, Weight Watchers. But I did it strictly for 2 months and I gained weight. And I couldn't figure out why. I did everything they said. And I know you know these people. They're in the gym, they're at your coffee store, they're your friends. And what integrated nutrition says is that for one person's food can be another person's poison. We're all a species, but we come from different genetic lines. And what we as nutrition coaches are meant to do, along with your healthcare provider, and of course borrowing any extenuating health circumstances, we're meant to diagnose and figure out what is the right nutritional plan or fuel for your body. And the great example I like to use is if you were to take a 40-year-old white woman and a 70-year-old Asian man and a 20-year-old African-American woman and put us all on the exact same nutritional plan, the truth is that we probably would accept those nutrients different, because there's a lot more going on than just the digestive system. So I can bore you to death on why, but I'll try not to. But it was just so mind-blowing for me that I decided to work with a couple of loved ones and just start seeing if their approach, which I then translated into my approach, which I call the genus approach to nutrition, would work in the real world. And it did. Now, does it work for everybody? No, because not everybody's in the right mind frame. Not everybody is in the right emotional space. Not everybody's at the right level of commitment, but it began to work really quickly with my friends. And from there, I was just like, this is not being talked about, specifically not in the South. Your only options around here still are pretty much, it's getting a little better in Nashville. Nashville's getting a little bit more current, but are the weight loss clinics or your big chop shop weight loss conglomerates that don't have the capacity to cater to the way that a nutrition coach can, to health, like your health experiences, whatever you're dealing with in your life, to your lifestyle, to your own personal goals, because it's not always about food. Or I'm sorry, it's not always about weight. I get long-winded. It made me so excited that I started, and I was doing both jobs for a while, and it began to take off like wildfire, and I had more and more clients. And about 2 years deep into practicing, I went 100%, quit my other job, and here I am today.
Do you think the fact that America is a melting pot, do you think that that has a impact on why maybe America suffers with obesity? You know, to a certain degree, obviously we have other obstacles and things like that as well. But do you think that the fact that we are kind of this melting pot is a reason that we suffer with obesity?
Excellent question. My gut instinct is no. I don't think that's the reason for our obesity epidemic in the United States. A lot of it has to do with our culture, our fast food, the pressure that we have for working beyond our regular typical hours. I think that when it comes, there's not a lot of data behind that I can answer to. I feel that the education that I have speaks to the fact that we've grown up in a culture of fast food. And I don't just mean the kind that's, got the arches above it. I mean the kind that's at your grocery store, that's in the aisle when we're checking out, or it's in the gas station when we're taking a long haul drive, or it's next to, you're getting your prescription and it's right next to your checkout place there. We live in a culture that bigger is better. That it's supersizing. But there's so many things we could discuss on that. People much more educated could get into all the reasons why. I don't personally think that genetically we have melted potted ourselves into some sort of we're going to all be fatter sort of mode. But I do think what is beautiful about where we're going with nutrition, because I want to back up just a little bit. What people don't realize is that nutrition was not studied as a science, as a medical science, until 1906. And that blew me away. I mean, medicine has been studied since the dawn of time. People have been cutting people open, right? Nobody was studying actually how the fuel that you accepted into your body was accepted as fuel until the start of 1906. And so we are in this fast forward 6-month half-life on nutrition. It is moving all the time. I am exposed to continued education all the time because there's all these new theories. That's why you'll hear people speak and they'll be like, oh, have you tried the cabbage diet? Have you done I'm trying not to say some of the big ones. Have you done the XYZ diet? Did you do the shake diet? Did you do the protein powder all day diet? Did you take this, milkshake, juicing? There's so many different theories. And the reason that they gain traction is because each one of those theories may work for a certain person of a certain descent. So I believe as we move forward, because you're right, I can't just say you're African American and you're from this part of Africa, so we're going to eat in that way and that's going to be best for your body. That was the theory originally. But as we become the melting pot that you've described, what we have to do as nutritional authorities is work with our healthcare providers, one, to encourage those healthcare providers to diagnose and diet at the same time they're diagnosing in medication. I don't know if you know this, but until 5 years ago, doctors in the United States were not required to take any nutritional studies. 5 years ago. So your cardiologist, unless they chose to, I hope they chose to, I hope they volunteered to take those classes. They weren't required. Your cardiologist, most of the things that happens in our heart, unless you're genetically predispositioned towards it, happens because of the things that we put in our mouth and things that we don't do while we're sitting on our couch, right? They are not trained on how to speak to you on what you should be eating, other than just handing you a sheet of paper or introducing you to their nutritionist who maybe gives you 45 minutes of your time. And then they would say, go on and do this. So our country, another issue, systemic problem is that we are more likely to prescribe a pill. It's easier. The doctor gets less time with you. They don't have to deal with teaching you things. Take this pill, it'll solve your cholesterol. Take this pill, and you have to worry about your stress and your blood pressure because it's solved. And I get it. And there are 100% reasons why it is amazing we have those medications. Western medicine is important. But we should be speaking to all the things associated. We should be diagnosing. That's what I'm trying to get to. We should be diagnosing the individual on what the ideal fuel is for them. Speak to your friend who has the intolerances for food. That person is a individual born of a certain parents, born of a certain lineage, living in a certain environment, living a certain lifestyle. Do they get outside? Do they live in the New York City in a tiny apartment? Do they live in the country where they get to be outside and in the environment? There's so many factors that go into what can lead to a healthy individual and somebody who might be struggling. So if we were to work with our healthcare providers and truly work with individuals to diagnose the correct fuel for the individual. And when I say fuel, it also, you have to take into account, yes, it is diet, what we put in our mouth, but we need to discuss supplements. Not everybody needs to take creatine powder all day long or protein powder. Not everybody does. So supplements need to be evaluated. Sleep, hormones that release in your body while you're sleeping, if you're not doing the right things, can either help or hurt you when it comes to how your body is storing and retaining fat or burning it. So sleep needs to be discussed. And then also, of course, movement. You can't go and do a diet and expect, unless you are 18 to 20, or maybe for some lucky genetics, so you're like in your 30s, maybe, but you can't just stop eating and intermittent fasting and expect it to work. You have to still move. So that was a long-winded answer to the fact that where I believe nutrition is going, I personally believe nutrition is going, is we're going to be moving into a diagnosis sort of experience. Going in and sitting down with your, for example, all the boom in mental health. You sit down and you have a diagnosis with that person and they help you move through said issue over periods of time. We check in, how are we doing? The same thing happens with food. And specifically, I am trained in eating disorders, and we work with people all the time that struggle with the emotional aspects of eating. We can be wounded in our childhood and we're, we're self-medicating, not through the cigarette or not through alcohol, but through food. There are many emotional things that are there. But where I think we're moving is towards a diagnosis and recommendation for the perfect diet for each individual.
What kind of possibility is there that, somebody is and maybe it's not at this point, but maybe it's in the future, but somebody is born at the hospital, right away they get some type of genetic testing done, and could that, ever be used as like a foundation for this is because we know these genes exist and whatever else, we know that this food or this kind of diet would be optimal for this person?
My mind just went to every sci-fi movie I've ever watched and loved / was horrified with. But my gut instinct is that if we had that capacity, it would be amazing. Now, imagine if you were born and genetically could be tested and told that for your genetic line, staying away from these food groups or adding these food groups in could keep you from getting cancer, could keep you from getting obesity, could keep you getting obesity, becoming obese, could keep you from having, goiter issues, thyroid issues, testosterone issues. What if you could be told that? Wouldn't you want to know? But the other side of it's, oh gosh, where's all that data going to be stored and who's going to know it? I mean, yeah, you get it, like all the sci-fi piece, but I personally hope that someday there's a version of that with safeguards and privacy and all that sort of stuff.
So this is a big question, and it's probably not a question that there's potentially a 100% answer on, and maybe it's always been a problem throughout just the history of humanity. But when did food become an issue as far as like how it responds to an individual human?
So I'd like to back up a little bit, and you were actually leading to something I was going to mention. We have the beautiful luxury of living in a year, 2022, that's so weird to say, that we are a civilized world, quote, quote. And we are enlightened, we are educated, we have a logistics system, we have a farming system, we live in a country that can allow for us to not have a winter coming. So let me back up a little bit. We forget we're a species. And I have to remind myself and my clients all the time, yes, we are self-aware, but we are a species. In the same way that your dog is a species, that your cat is a species, and we were genetically predispositioned to consume and store fat during our surplus time in order to have fuel storage to survive a starvation time. But guess what? In the United States, it's no longer coming. So I think to answer your question, it kind of also piggybacks on your question earlier about the Americas. United States, we have obesity because we have the opportunity for excess calories in whatever form you want. We have excess time, discretionary time, and we have excess calories. You go to a third world country, you're not going to see as much obesity because they don't have it. They are out there hunting, gathering, still trying to find their food, and they're eating what they have, and the winter will come. But the average American in the United States no longer is storing food for a winter that's coming. And so we consume, and the fat gets stored, and we consume, and we consume. So I personally think that there has been a massive uptick on that because the American success, the American story success. But if you back up further, I believe it has to do with discretionary time as well. You can go all the way back to, think of France during Charlemagne or during, before, I think way back, your nobility were obese. It was considered attractive to be obese because it meant you had enough money to have extra calories. You were never starving through the winter, but they also struggled with things they called gout, which we now know is related to rich foods consumption. So I think the answer to your question is, I think it has always been around in civilized societies where there is excess time and excess money for excess calories.
So when you mentioned the excess,
theory.
when you mentioned the excess time, I think a lot of people would be almost like counter to that point, like, oh, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that. It's a big kind of reason a lot of people don't start, whether it be eating right or going to the gym or whatever kind of, habit that may be considered challenging. Do you believe that excess time that we do have is do you think that we almost like value it to do more as far as like make more money over being healthier? And like if we do, why do we see almost like money as, I mean, that's probably a bigger question than this podcast topic, but like if if survival as a human is so important, and we have this hierarchy of needs, like why isn't our own health almost put on more of a pedestal than the time?
You just answered your question. You just answered your question because I was going to say that I don't have time is an excuse. I spend my time, about a third of my time, walking people through understanding and really discovering their own excuses. One of the premises, I wrote an article on my website. I hope you'll go and check it out. I call it The Lies We Tell Ourselves. The great I am this, I am that is kind of solidified in your 20s, 30s, depending on where you are. The great I am is the things that come to our brain that says this: I am tall, I am fat, I am athletic, I am not. All those things that come to your brain without even thinking. And a lot of times, excuses like what you're describing, I don't have energy, I don't have time, is a lie that we believe about ourselves, and we don't take the time. I think wisdom comes with taking the time to stop, and rather than letting that come to the front of your brain from your subconscious immediately, saying, do I still feel this way? Am I still too busy for my health? You're not too busy to sit down and binge 7 hours of Yellowstone. I mean, you're not too busy to make the cake and eat the cookies, not too busy to drive through the drive-through. So I think it's an excuse in the American society that we have. I work with probably some of the most busy individuals you can possibly imagine. And when they hit the wall of stress, because stress does affect how you're eating, and when they believe their lies for why they're not doing it, things start to break down. So just like you have to pay your bills, just like you have to take care of your dog who's barking in the background, just like you have to do all those things, I think that I believe that we are not so busy that we can't. I think it's just an excuse.
So with that being said, how do you think we got kind of wired to almost like not have that need for, I mean, I guess maybe the need for survival is being met, but the need for then there maybe there's not really a need for like optimization or a need for basically past a baseline level of health. I mean, do you think that there is some people that have a almost a need for more than the baseline, or is it just kind of a mindset that anybody can attain?
Well, one, I think there's probably a multitude of answers to that. It's all individual, right? I would say those individuals have found their why. If it's not just you're just genetically blessed, I want to run mountains and I look like this and look at my abs because I didn't eat last night. um Outside of that, I believe that those people who are out there doing it every day have found their why. And when clients come to me and they want to talk about the belt loop that they're on or the skirt that they're wearing, that's great, happy to talk to you about that. But what we spend more time on is I ask them to find a why, something outside of that. And a lot of times we get into health stuff because the weight will come. If you're deciding I want to be healthier so that I live longer, so that I can get on the floor and play with my grandkids in 25 years, or I would like to go on a bike ride that my friends all go on across Idaho in June. A why that's not related to vanity, because creating a lifestyle change, if you're doing it strictly for how you look in the mirror, as soon as you achieve it, you're going to fall off that wagon. You're no longer going to be doing it because you've done it. Check. But that's what leads to that yo-yo diet thing. Like, I'm either on the wagon or I'm off the wagon. In order to create lifestyle change, a true systemic change in yourself, I think finding and getting a linchpin that's non-vanity related and making that your goal will lead to a longer term change in patterns.
I think that's an interesting thing, and I've never really connected the dots there as far as like the lifestyle. And I think the kind of the way I put it together was like, you can't have a lifestyle change until you change your almost your lifestyle perspective in a way. If you're hanging around the same people or doing the same activities, just going to the gym or eating different foods is almost irrelevant in the long term, because it's still that old lifestyle is still there and you're still really living it. That's really cool. I never thought about it that way.
Well, I speak a lot to my clients about the difference between a diet and a holistic change. Most of my clients, no matter what dietary theory I put my clients on, we're getting back to real food that your body understands. You can meet a guy at the gym and they gain a ton of muscle and they look amazing. And they're like, dude, I've been taking this protein powder and I'm eating only egg whites and broccoli and chicken and rice. And that's all I'm eating. Well, is that a lifestyle sustainable diet? Or is it a temporary, okay, here's a Band-Aid on the problem? Because in America, we forget how much the algorithm is pumping into our daily interactions things that are called healthy. They still can put wholesome on anything. What does that mean? 99% pure. Well, 99% pure what? Marketing tells us that what we're eating is healthy. A lot of times I'll start to evaluate a client, which I do by watching how they eat normally, not being good, not being bad, but watching how they eat normally for a while. And they truly believe, because they've been told, they're making good choices. But some of these health bars are like a candy bar. And some of these protein powders are so filled with words that are this long and we can't pronounce. Do you think your body can understand what that chemical is?
Right.
We're a species, we've got to remember that. So I think to manifest change, we have to stop thinking like, I want to look good for my wedding. I want to look good for the workout group I'm going to see next week, or I want to fit into this pair of jeans. We have to find a way to choose to eat fuel, to view the fuel that you're putting in your mouth, your food you're putting in your mouth, as a fuel, and to have it be something where when you do fuck off, when you do mess off, and decide I want to eat caramel cake the size of my face, that you don't go into a downward spiral and you're like, well, I'm off the wagon. I might as well now drink a case of beer and I'm going to eat the French fries and the whatever. And I'll do it again. I'll start again tomorrow. That pattern of I'm going to start again tomorrow. Because nobody needs to live on a completely restricted diet. So in my world, when I speak to my clients, I'm trying to get them to a lifestyle fuel standpoint. We start, for people who may be trying to lose weight, I call it reducing. It's an old 1930s term. It's reducing. Kind of like the phased approach. Remember South Beach did that at one point. The idea being that we're going to do things radically short term in order to get your metabolism back rocking, to correct some of your bad habits. And then we're going to add food back in. And over our time together, we're going to evaluate how that food is doing in your body. And how is it working for you? Is it not working for you? And that diagnosis is dynamic and it's changing. And then once we reach let's say a plateau where you've reached your weight goal, let's just say it's gaining weight or losing weight or getting my blood pressure medicine reduced or whatever it is, that goal, that first goal, we're then going to slowly add back in more. So we can see the barometer within which you can really screw off on your food and still be eating well. So back to what I was speaking about, marketing, we're told certain things are so healthy because the marketing and what shows up on our Instagram feed, and we've heard Betty Sue across the street talking about, or your bro at the gym who's been lifting like crazy, we're told it's healthy, so we just somehow believe it. The marketing in America is another reason. Those diet bars that we think we're taking are basically candy bars.
Do you think, I think a big problem, not necessarily I don't want to say it's a problem, but I think a big reason people do overeat and they eat, maybe the wrong things too much, is because it's seen as like this social thing, and it's seen as like this reward. Or if you have a bad day, I'm going to come home and eat, pig out, or a good day, I'm going to pig out, or a celebration, a birthday cake. Like, do you think that just like we've almost construed food in this country, or maybe just even in the whole world, or at least a lot of the world, as being like our main purpose almost? Like, and when I say that, like, it's almost like if you
I mean,
if you take
socially.
if you take out food and you input like cocaine in the same area, it would be considered negative, and it would be considered like a social, something that we don't want people to do. But it's okay if people, go out and have the ice cream every night, or they do whatever, they eat unhealthy on a regular basis. That's seen as okay. And you're rewarding yourself and eating when you're sad. And like all of that's almost seen as like a completely okay thing. And it's seen as, I think, it's seen as almost like the end goal is like the food. Is there a systemic like reason that like we don't, let's just say as Americans, we don't have any bigger goals in our lives, is because like, and that's what we fill the void with, is just this pleasure from eating food constantly and constantly. This just brings us these short-term hits.
I'm going to back up and answer the first part of your question, because that last part's a doozy. I'm not sure who could even answer that. Um, the first part of you were kind of poning me up for something I was going to lead into. I spend a third of my time in the counseling aspect. We feed our bodies. Again, back to the fact we are a species, right? There are four main drugs that make us happy that come out of our brain. Guess what one of them is? It's dopamine. And you get that dopamine from eating unhealthy foods. Isn't that crazy? The bad foods that make you get fat and make your health worse is what sends out the dopamine. Well, do you know why? The reason is because as a species, we're supposed to be gaining food storage for the winter that's not coming. So your body sends out that happy drug, that little, like, and for people who have eating disorders, it is truly an addictive drug in the same way that an alcoholic would have a problem, or a drug addict would have a problem. That dopamine is why we seek out comfort food. It's called comfort food because it releases. You eat a McDonald's burger, it releases. Okay, because your body is saying, yay, I get to store some fat. And we're going to survive longer than other people during the starvation period, which isn't coming. So I believe that we naturally want to eat comfort food for that reason, chemically. Socially, I do it. I'm from a huge Irish family, but we eat like we're Italian. We love each other through food. Why aren't you get in here? Eat. Why aren't you here? Eat the food. I made you the food. We love you. You're sitting here, not eating. Eat the food. And there's so much pressure to accept somebody else's love. I'm loving you by bringing you home McDonald's today, honey. I know you've been working hard. Got you your favorite extra biggie supersized fry. And there's all tons of theory. Again, I've written quite a few articles if you want to check them out on my website, nutritionnext.net. But one of them speaks to co-eating, and the fact that you spoke a little earlier about the habits that we form can be impacted by the people that are surrounding us. That's true. And people are, and your loved ones in your lives are not trying to sabotage you. And they're not out to sabotage what you're doing. They're just not ready to make a change themselves. And guess what? If I want to eat the fries because I've had a bad day and I want that dopamine, and I come home and I say, hey, Remy, brought you fries, and you don't want to eat them with me, I'm going to feel bad about myself. I'm not going to feel positive about you making a good change. Do you see?
Right.
And so socially, there's a lot going into why it's harder to make a better choice. You go out to dinner with couples or family, and they're like, let's order the appetizer that we're all going to share. I bought this appetizer for you. Why aren't you going to eat it with me? How do you handle those things? And that's what I spend a third of my time walking through with my clients, teaching somebody a new nutrition plan. The average adult can do it. They're educated enough to understand what they're supposed to eat and what not. Yes, no, what are supposed to be eating and not eating. The counseling piece, what I spend an hour a week with my clients on is how it's working and not working within their lifestyle, how social events are impacting you. What excuses are you telling yourself for why we're not doing it? And one of those can be co-eating. You can have a spouse who loves you and wants you to be the healthiest person on the planet, but they don't even realize they're sabotaging you. So I think it's a huge, somebody much smarter than me is writing a thesis right now, I'm sure at Boston University about all those things. What I do know is how to help my clients and friends and family to overcome said issues as they arise. And they tend to be, with one client, it may be, I have a saboteur in my home. Another client, it can be, I feel a lot of pressure with my family. So there tends to be ties that bind, but there are ways to overcome it. It just sometimes needs somebody to say, like you and I are right now, this is happening. How do I handle it? And I go, well, this is what you should do. Okay. Mindfulness, taking a moment to be mindful about some sort of social situation that may slip you up on your choices for good fuel.
Do you think, and this is kind of one of those maybe like what if questions or future questions, but like, do you ever see a day and age, or, is there anything out there that says one day we won't really even worry about food? Like we'll be, getting our nutrition through some kind of other means where there's not a fast food. There's, you just, you fill up through a gel, let's just say a gel packet, once a day or twice a day, and you go on to something else. It's not this social event. It's not this dinner table event anymore.
I tell you, I hope not. I like food. I mean, I do what I do for a living. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. I love the cheese board, the charcuterie, or however you say it. I love the piece of carrot cake that's the size of my face. We as humans, I personally hope we don't get to what you're describing, because we love each other through social events. And, I think this last couple of years of isolation have taught us how important those things are. It's just about choosing. I think personally where we're going is that there will be a better understanding for one, what you should be consuming, for allowing yourself sort of a weekday guideline and weekend guideline. Things look a little different. When I go to a party for my best friend's birthday, it's not going to be the same as a random Tuesday night dinner. And I think there might be something like you're describing for your regular food, and then there would be special event stuff. I'm not sure. It also, again, speaks to the sci-fi geek in me. I'm like, ooh, I don't know. That might not be great. The pellet comes out and you eat it, and ugh, I don't know. I'm not.
It makes me think, like, if that happened, what would be the new activity? There would have to be something to fill that gap of like time, because we spend so much time with food and buying food and preparing it, or even just waiting in line at the fast food place, or, there's so much time. That's kind of back to my other point before, like we have all this time invested in the food we eat. If it went away, or if it wasn't there, like what would we be doing? Would there be almost an emptiness and more depression? Would there be like more, just, I
Well, for
think it,
me, it's a love language. I mean, food, I have always, before I got into doing what I'm doing now, I didn't do it in a healthy way, but I love cooking. It is a way for me to love people. I like cooking. I like you standing in the kitchen with me while I'm cooking. Open up the bottle of wine. It's a love language. And so I hope that it's never going to go away. But what I do now, instead of making the, 7-layer lasagna, I choose to love the individuals in my life through cooking healthy food. And I don't mean the gross stuff. I'm talking about getting back to real food, what your palate wants. The American palate tends to do salt and fat. It makes us super happy about what we're eating, right? Salt, fat, and sugar. And because it's expensive, herbs are less in things that are not dried or paste form. It's further away from its natural state. If you cook with products food closer to its natural state, It tastes better. It starts to awaken parts of your palate that isn't on the regular, unless you're eating out at a chef's place every weekend. It's a way to love. You can be creative and make healthy food through fresh herbs, fresh spices, different and exotic cuisine. You just take out the bad parts, you substitute with the good ones. So I hope I answered your question, but I think that I think it would be a travesty if, as a species, we lost the capacity to connect through food.
Yeah.
Because mothers nourish babies, mothers nourish children, fathers provide, or mothers provide, I don't care gender, whatever you want to be, but we love and provide for each other through keeping each other alive with a roof and with our food. So I don't think it'll ever go away. But back to discretionary time, you would be amazed. Most of my clients aren't making bad choices because they have a ton of time to sit around and think, I want to eat Wendy's tonight. They're making bad choices because they're buying the convenience foods that are packed with sugar and salt and fat and processed preservatives. And your body, your species, your animal species, just like your dog, would your dog do well on protein powder?
They probably wouldn't stop eating it either if they did.
No. So, eating food closer to its natural state. I'm not even going to bore you with all of the, organic, farm to table, all that stuff. I could bore the crap out of you about why that's a good choice, but just starting with food that looks like food. Why are we buying the box of egg whites when you could buy the damn egg and crack open the egg and eat the egg white? Why are we buying the canned green beans when the green beans are right over there? I know it's more expensive. That is one of the big problems. But your body will react and respond to real food when given the choice. It's a finely tuned computer that wants to fix itself.
I think some of the stuff you're talking about with all these, all these options, and some options seem like the better option because of what we're told or maybe what we're not told. Do you think that the cards are stacked against us on purpose?
I think that is a huge topic, and one that I find very interesting. I think the answer is yes and no. I think it comes right down to it. We live in a capitalist society, and the goal of the CEO of the hostess company is to sell as many hostess cakes as they can. And if they can fill it with fat and sugar, and if they fly off the shelf, so why wouldn't they? They're making the money and they're buying the second home for their wives. Great, good for them, right? So the only piece of that I would say falls in like the governmental area would be some of the challenges with corn surpluses and tax issues in the 80s that led to high fructose corn syrup and that sort of stuff. I think that is a very complicated. Do I think that there is somebody, a puppet master, say, "Ooh, let's try to get Americans fat"? No. I just think it's where we are. And the average American was going to have already turned off this podcast because it's really boring to them. I used to be super entertaining at parties when I was talking about new jobs and technology, right? I watch people glaze over because I get real nerdy about it. It's also really confusing too, because you may hear that cool new mushroom powder is going to do this for you, and it does. It probably does. But you're also doing all these other things that are fucking up it working. You can't just say, I'm going to implement protein powder into my workout and then suddenly look like the guy on Instagram you've been following, or buy a supplement you put in your mouth and said, there has to be a holistic look to it. It's not only, am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? Am I moving well? Do I have the right fuel going into me? Sure. At that point, when you got all that taken care of and you decide you want to add that mushroom, fungus powder into your world because of XYZ and probiotics, prebiotics, great. But you got a bigger problem, man. Let's not start with the, it feels like putting lipstick on a pig a little.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to the medication side. Like a supplement is almost seen as like a quick fix, like a medication is.
That's the problem. Have you seen? Oh gosh, my head's gonna blow off when I talk about this. I'm sure you have seen. I'm nerdy. I watch the History Channel all the time, which I think is put together strictly for people in their like 60s and 70s, which is hilarious to me. But they have this pill now that basically it's a fruit pill or the vegetable pill, and if you take these pills, you don't have to eat fruit and vegetables.
I've not
Let's
seen
all
that.
remember, folks. No supplements, including your protein powder, is evaluated by the FDA. There could be nothing in those. And do you really think that your body is going to recognize whatever the hell that is in that pill? And is it, it's insane to me. But again, I get it. If you called me today and said, here's a pill, there's no side effects, you'll live just as long, it's not going to affect your health, you're perfectly fine until you're 100 years old, but you'll never have to go to the gym today and you're going to have those leg muscles you like, I would fucking take them all day. I mean, you're an idiot if you wouldn't, right? But what are we believing? You know, we're living now in a world where a meme we see for 30 seconds on Instagram is fact, right? So are we going out to research what we're learning? You know, okay, this is what I've heard we're supposed to be doing. Are you going to actually do research to figure out if it's actually real? Is it real or is it marketing? You want to know the problem? It's all the marketing. The big, you know, that's where, and I don't blame them. Again, these are big businesses trying to make money to pay, you know, to pay for their houses. But the average American doesn't want to do the due diligence to figure out if that pill I was talking about earlier might cause me cancer in a year, if it actually does do what it says it's going to do. And I don't blame them. But I think it comes out of the wash. I have my average client is between 30 and my oldest has been 67. Men and women, different variations on fitness level. I've had very, very fit people who are trying to get out of the process of cutting and building for bodybuilding shows, trying to get out of that. They screwed their metabolism up. I have women who are perimenopausal, postmenopausal. I have men struggling with the average things, but also testosterone issues, maybe trying not to get on supplements there. I have people all across the board. I don't have a lot of 20-year-olds calling me, you know, because eat kind of okay and work out a little bit, you're going to be pretty good. The average, you know, maybe not now because, you know, the millennials and probably even a little bit older than that, we were all told it was healthy to eat, you know, a burger and a side of chips. That's American cuisine, right? You know, so I say all that to say, I think we'd all do well to take the extra time to research a little bit further the things we're going to try.
Yeah.
And don't research on their YouTube channel. Don't research on, you know, go and actually read the science. And if you can't and you don't want to, find somebody who will. And there are a lot of people out there who will and will help them research. Don't pull a trigger on a new regime for a week. Give yourself a week. Do some research for a week. If you really find the information that you need from reliable sources, then full steam ahead.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get stuck after that initial motivation though to, you know, a lot of people after a week, it's like, oh, they're onto something else. You know, it doesn't, they might have seen a post on Instagram that inspired them to make this big change. And if they waited that week, it would pretty much be onto, you know, my next adventure. But I mean, do you think that like, and this is kind of just one of those questions again that's more theoretical, but do you think that there would possibly be a future to where, you know, you're mentioning like the Hostess brand or whatever brand? How do we get those brands and get the companies to make the healthy option what they're offering? You know, would
The
there not
mighty
be?
dollar talks. I think there are 1,000 theories on how to fix that problem. My personal theory right now, it's very expensive to eat healthy in the United States. And every grocery store you go into now, even convenience store, has a point of sale system that can identify in the moment what you've purchased, reordered back to the warehouse, and it's now getting shipped. Like in the moment I purchase it. why can't the taxes associated with food be that adjustable? And what I mean by that is, like in the state of Tennessee, I believe it's milk, bread, eggs. I think those are the main three, that there's a reduction on tax for purchasing because we have a state income tax. I'm sorry, state purchase tax, sales tax. It would be very, very easy for the government to make it more expensive to purchase the unhealthy food by taxing it higher. And nominally, those cents that may not mean much to you and I, they add up. And they certainly add up for the people like Walmart who are trying to decide what units they're going to put on the shelf, because they are making their money by the dime, right? They're not making it by the 100. They're making it per unit by the dime, and they're moving a shiz ton of it, right? So if we could find a way to make the Hostess more expensive than buying the apple, maybe not from the cost of the product or manufacturing of the product, but from the taxes put on it, then maybe more Americans would choose it. And therefore, the companies that are producing the unhealthy stuff will make adjustments and try to get categorized into a healthier government-related taxation bracket. That's an idea that I had. I'm sure there are smart people who've had that idea. It's been shot down, I'm sure. But I can't speak to the intellectual governmental food people out there who may or may not be making things happen or not.
Does subsidies play a big role in why some foods are more, more affordable than others?
I'm in the South, which again, I live in Tennessee. I live in Nashville, which is much more like living in Atlanta or Chicago now. I think it's something like 70 new Californians move here a day now to Nashville. So maybe not Nashville. Nashville's a pocket, but outside of that, when you've got Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Arkansas, some of the highest obesity rates in the country, but the poverty levels are really high as well, very high. And if you are a single mother who makes, $19,000 a year at whatever job it is you're in, and you go into the grocery store, you can't afford waste, and vegetables spoil. You're shopping the center of the store. You're not shopping outside where the fresh stuff is, because it's too expensive and you run the risk of losing things. So, you're shopping the unhealthy preserved, you're shopping the mac and cheese, you're shopping the ramen, you're shopping whatever discounted cereal is there. That is a big issue. Is if you are under the poverty line, eating healthy isn't they call them food deserts. Well, that's a double term. Food desert also means you can't actually get the better products, the organic thing, etc. But people who are living below the poverty line are just not, healthy food isn't accessible to them. And that's a bigger issue that I can't even begin to speak to without doing something wrong.
A lot of this is big, picture stuff, but it starts with kind of like what you do with helping, a person at a time. And what do you think, do you think that in 20 years that we'll be in a better position than we are today?
I like to think so, because like I said, the information, the science behind nutrition is moving so fast, and people who care, people who are interested, people who want a better fuel source are out there evaluating it and constantly changing what looks well. I think that things will calm down is my answer. Yes. I think there will be more people like me. I think there will be more diagnosis. I think there currently is being evaluated, people who, got Western medicine, the pill theory, like we're just going to solve it with pills. And then you've got the Eastern medicine where you solve it with herbs and spices. And why do those work? Ancient, Chinese medicine, why does it work? That's all now being scientifically evaluated. They're actually doing them in studies to figure out, why does turmeric decrease inflammation in our joints? Why does dandelion reduce bloating and water retention? They're doing a lot of science behind why, certain things, in Eastern medicine was very brushed off because it was old. We're in Western medicine now. And I believe there's going to be a better marriage. I think that you're going to see East and West medication, working closer with people in nutrition, people in movement. I say movement because that incorporates meditation, that incorporates yoga, working out, movement. And then you're going to get in more. I think you're going to hear more and more and more about sleep. And the average American is looking at their phones 2 minutes before they go to sleep, and it's laying next to them, even though it's on silent, it buzzes all night long. And there is so much yet to be learned about what that's doing to our brains. So I think it's going to get better because it's going to slow down. And I think we're going to see a more standardized marriage between those different factors.
That's a big hope. And, this conversation could certainly go on for hours and hours, and we could get into so many different topics as we kind of have, but I think it's a really good conversation. I really appreciate you sharing, your knowledge and your experience in this field. And, it's been really cool getting to talk to you.
It's really awesome. I hope somebody stayed on till the end and we didn't bore them to death. If anybody would like to, you can reach out to me on Nutrition Coach Kat, CAT, or better yet, on my website, which is nutritionnext.net. I also have a personal account, which I think you've tagged in here, for my hobby and love for movement, which is Steel Mace Flow, under Nashville Steel Mace Flow. And we didn't even touch on that, but what a wonderful community. And if you're listening and you have not checked out steelmaceflow.com, please do. Leo Savage is a genius, and it is a great, great meditative movement that you could add to your life.
I think that'd be cool if you would want to come back on and talk about that sometime. That'd be a really cool topic to discuss as well.
I could nerdy out on that all day long.
That'd be
Thank
fun.
you so much for having me on. It's been fun.